Hi, I'm Dan Danford with another episode of Money Made Easy for dadsdivorce.com. This week we're going to talk about insurance a little bit. And by way of explanation, I'm going to start out by telling you I am a licensed insurance producer in the state of Missouri. Now, having said that, it's also important that I tell you I've never sold a policy or an annuity in my life, okay? In the state of Missouri, if you are going to advise clients on insurance policies, then you need to be licensed. So I am licensed and I keep my license current, but I don't sell any products at all. I'm fairly knowledgeable on the subject. One of the issues about insurance is that we pay for it frequently and we use it infrequently. So I run into people all the time that say, you know, I don't believe in insurance. I don't buy insurance. I'll probably never make a claim against the insurance. And I understand those things. I really understand that feeling because insurance premiums are fairly high and it's hard to write that check every month. So I thought the first thing we'd talk about today is why you need insurance anyway. The whole idea behind insurance is that many of us can set aside a little bit of money on an ongoing basis, and then if somebody has a catastrophe, they're able to draw upon that money to take care of their situation. Okay? So the truth is most of us don't have emergency reserves that are big enough to take care of the worst crisis that could come. Now, if we buy a new car, I mean, obviously we're paying on that car, most of us, on a monthly basis, and we'll own that car in 3 or 4 years' time. But if somebody totals that car and we don't have insurance, it'd be very difficult for us to also finance the cost of a second car. We still haven't paid for the first car. We don't have money sitting in the bank that would allow us to do that, so we need to have insurance for that crisis. Same thing with a house. If we buy a house and we don't have insurance and the house burns down, where are we going to get money to buy another house? Okay? So you need to have insurance to cover those kinds of things. Health insurance is similar. If you'd have some kind of crisis, and believe me, it doesn't take a very big crisis to run up a lot of medical bills, how would you pay those without insurance? So the real reason to have insurance is because all of us do encounter emergencies in our life, and insurance helps us cover those when the time comes. The other part is, although the insurance premiums seem high, and anybody who drives a decent car or lives in a nice house knows that those premiums are high, it's still a very little amount compared to what the potential claim might be. Okay, so maybe your house insurance runs you $500 a year. Okay, that's a lot of money. $500 could be used for a lot of other things. But if your house burns down and they end up replacing a $100,000 house, then that $500 a year policy doesn't seem very high. Since we so infrequently make a claim on our insurance, we tend to forget how much money might be involved. So relatively speaking, there are small premiums compared to our potential benefit. Another reason is that in certain circumstances, there are actually requirements that we have insurance. Okay? Two good examples come to mind is most states require that most drivers have some kind of insurance on their car, at least liability insurance in the event that I cause you an accident and then I have to, through my insurance, pay for the damages that I caused. Okay? So most states have a coverage requirement for car insurance. At the same time, most people don't pay cash for a home. Instead, they have a mortgage on their home, and usually the person who makes that mortgage, who loans us money for the home, has a requirement that we have insurance on the home. Now, usually they require kind of the bare minimums, so we may want to have more than that, but we may have to have some requirements just because somebody requires us to have that insurance. And the last one I'll talk about is a little fuzzier, but I think it's an important consideration, and that is not a legal requirement, maybe even not a financial requirement. It's sort of a moral requirement. I remember talking to a fellow one time, and he was telling me he had done some estate planning with people, and young I want to say young, middle-aged man and his wife were in the office, and they were talking about wills and trusts and things like that. And he was pointing out, do you have life insurance? And the man said, no, I don't believe in life insurance. And so my friend said, well, if you don't believe in life insurance, what's going to happen if something happens to you, to your wife and children? And this fella said, well, she's attractive, she'll get married again, and so I don't feel like I need to worry about that. And my friend looked at him and said, okay, I guess here's the issue. It's not whether or not your spouse will get married again. It's whether or not you are going to require her to get married again. I mean, that should be a choice for your family, but it shouldn't be the only choice for your family. They shouldn't have to remarry so that they can be taken care of financially, okay? And that goes for either spouse in any circumstance, okay? There is a moral obligation, at least in my mind, to take care of the people who depend on you in the event of catastrophe. So, I guess those are 3 or 4 issues that I think of. Now, some of the things that you need to insure, and it's really important. Obviously, your house. I would look at full replacement value on a house with inflation riders. In other words, your house goes up in value from time to time, and you want to be able to, if the roof needs replacing, not only do you want to replace the roof, but if the place burns down, you also want to be able to replace the house at its current value rather than what its depreciated value might be. So I think that's really important. One of the areas that people often miss is disability income. From a statistic standpoint, it's far more likely that any one of us will become disabled rather than to prematurely die. So many people understand the reasons for having life insurance and have life insurance. Far fewer people have disability insurance, and it's a real important area of coverage. I also one of the things I talk about is liability coverage. Most insurance companies offer something called an umbrella liability policy. Think of this as a very inexpensive policy that raises the limits on your other insurance if you would cause an accident or get sued. Okay, so typically you can buy, $1 million liability umbrella, which fits over other insurance coverage you already have in place, but it only costs a few $100s a year, and it adds a lot of protection in the event that something would go wrong. And the last one I'll touch on a little bit is long-term care. Get a lot of questions about long-term care insurance. This is basically the insurance that covers the cost of a nursing home or in-home care after somebody becomes disabled or needs that. And there's no question that those are very expensive. In-home care or nursing home care are very, very expensive. And so it's a fearful thought for many folks. And I think that looking at coverage is probably a good idea. It is very expensive, and probably if you buy it too young, you pay the premiums for a very, very long period of time. And if you try to buy it too late, then the premiums are very, very high, almost non-affordable for many people. So what I've seen is that if people are in their late 40s through their early 60s, that's probably the window where it makes the most sense. One other caveat is these policies differ from one to the other. So take a good look around at the different policies that are available. Don't necessarily buy from the first person who shows up. Because there really are a lot of differences from policy to policy, and you'll get better values from some than others. I often tell people, and this is especially true if you're a senior citizen, for insurance coverages and things, I often tell people to compare through the AARP organization. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean you're going to buy through them, but they offer car coverage, life coverage, they offer long-term care coverage, and those are a good place to start kind of with what are common coverages and what expenses might be for policies of that kind, and then compare those to the people you're talking to locally. Okay, I hope we've talked enough about the topic of insurance to kind of hit away on why it's important to have insurance and some of the issues you need to be tuned to as you think about insurance and think about the things that need to be covered. Again, the main purpose for having insurance is to protect against catastrophe. I mean, the things you can't afford to fix on your own. I would check your deductibles, have high deductibles on things. Just because it costs a lot to have the low deductibles and you can save some money on an ongoing basis, and really what you're trying to do is protect against the catastrophe, not the minor bumps and jostles that happen in life. Okay, that's it for another episode of Money Made Easy for dadsdivorce.com. I'll see you again next week.